channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes, that you find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 84, and we are at the very end of April, year 2022. A warm welcome to everybody joining me today. I hear a robin singing very loudly outside the window, also saying hello. I don't have the windows open quite yet right now. It's still a little bit chilly, but it looks like we're going to be having highs in the 50s, and that's going to be really nice. I don't believe we are past the frost risk yet, so maybe not quite time to plant things. We have perennials coming up though, so that's really exciting. I will have had some footage in the vlog in the beginning of this episode that you will have seen. There are tulips, hyacinths, I believe the daffodils. We haven't had a lot of daffodils come up in the past, I think 2 years since we planted them, but maybe this year they will all come up. I don't know. We have several daylilies. The daylilies in the front yard are doing better than the daylilies in the backyard. In the back, they are just being decimated by the deer. The deer, I mean, I think they come by every day, and as soon as the daylilies get just above the mulch, they get chomped right off. I'm hoping that makes them maybe stronger if they are able to get past the deer, because it's kind of the same idea as pruning, but generally you don't prune your plants every day. Anyway, we shall see how that goes. The azalea bushes have buds on them. I don't think I've seen the foxglove come up yet, but I didn't dig around there too much. The yarrow have come up, and the poppies, we planted Icelandic poppies for the first time last summer, and they are coming up. I think the deer were leaving those alone, but the bunnies might have gotten to some of them. Anyway, we shall see. It's always so exciting in the springtime seeing what comes back, what has survived the winter, what has survived the deer and the bunnies. But if you've been following for a while, you know that I just love plants and flowers and having a vegetable garden. And throughout the episodes in the warmer months, I usually have a bouquet of flowers sitting next to me, and so I'm really looking forward to the return of those. We have dahlias, and we had so many zinnias last year. We are hoping to plant those again. Those are annuals, and we just had the biggest zinnia bush last year. They were probably 4 to 5 feet tall. Every once in a while the bunnies would try to get to it and you would see it go timber, but there was plenty to spare for the zinnias, so we just let the bunnies eat whatever. But so that's super exciting. And something else kind of fun is the kids have been doing plant units at school. Well, at least the younger one has. I don't know if the older one is currently doing plant unit, but they had planted marigolds from seed, and I remember doing that as a kid as well. And so she brought home her marigold plant in this little paper bag, and she said she was so careful with it so that it wouldn't tip over. She was a little upset that it had tipped over a little bit and some dirt was shaken up, but the plants look just fine, and they aren't quite to blooming yet. It's just leaves right now, but she's so proud of it. And when she goes to school, she says, "Mommy, take care of my plant at home, okay?" And she makes sure that it's in the sun, and oh, it's so cute. And she had this little plant book that they were writing in for the start from seed to leaves to flowers eventually, and they had to journal in it and make observations, and it's so fun. My youngest one is a kindergartner, and my older one is in 3rd grade. So, and the 3rd grader right now is working on a presentation about Venus flytraps. I have been contemplating getting a Venus flytrap inside the house for the summer to catch like gnats and flies, but I haven't heard of people generally having Venus flytraps in their house. Do people do that? I don't really know, but it seems like a good idea, right? To have a Venus flytrap in the house. We don't have like pets that would mess with it. I mean, we have fish, but they stay in a tank, right? So I feel like it should be safe to have a Venus flytrap in the house. Let me know what you think. If you have any Venus flytraps in your house, I would love to know if they are easy to take care of and if they do the job for gnats and flies. I have 2 finished projects to share with you today and several works in progress to share with you. They are all knitting related, and I believe, let me check my notes here. One of the projects I did not have cast on last time, so that'll be brand new. If you follow me on Instagram, my handle is edible.thoughts.makes there. I'll put it on the screen, but it's also linked in the description box below. I have shared works in progress, like sneak peek photos of that project, but I will talk about it here. That leads me to say that links to things that I talk about will all be in the description box below. If there's a certain designer with patterns, I usually link to their website if they have one. That way you can find all of their social media, where to buy their patterns, and all of that stuff there, instead of linking like individual things to different shops that they might have. Some designers do have their patterns available on Ravelry and Payhip and I don't know, other places as well. So it's just easier for me to link just to their website. And I do use Ravelry, so my projects do have Ravelry project pages, and that will be specifically noted so that you know that it goes to a Ravelry project page. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there was something else I wanted to mention here. If you are new here, well, if you started already, you'll have seen that I usually do a vlog in the beginning, which captures some moments from the last couple of weeks, or at least since the last time I recorded. And then I usually start out with kind of an intro, update what's going on in life. And then I jump into finished projects, and then works in progress, and then an eats and reads section. And all of those sections are time-stamped in the description box below for your convenience, for finding things, or maybe you watch it in segments, and it's just easier for me too if I'm like going back and looking for stuff. And the videos are all closed captioning is provided. I don't know why it's called closed captioning versus just captions. Anyway, there's a CC button if you need the captions for whatever reason. It is available to you. I do use the auto YouTube captioning feature, and then I go back in and edit it so that things make sense. A lot of times words get jumbled or whatever it is, or especially if it's in a different language or something like that, it needs to be edited. So I do that. So in my mug today, oh, this is one of my favorite mugs. It's an East Fork pottery mug in the colorway Tarot. Do you call it colorway if it's a mug? Maybe just a color. I actually don't know the definition of like colorway. When would you use colorway versus just color? I digress. I have decaf Earl Grey with a splash of soy milk in here to cool it down. I'm not quite sure it is cool enough yet. I'm trying to see if there's still steam coming up. So good. Do you like Earl Grey? I feel like Earl Grey is one of those that if you don't like floral notes in your tea, maybe it's not for you. But I love bergamot. We actually have bee balm growing in our garden, and the little bee balm leaves are coming up and they smell so good. You just rub a little bit on your fingers. I love it. All right, well, let's jump right in. The first finished project I'd like to share with you is the one that I'm wearing. This is the Go Gently cardigan, and the designer is Amy of Amy Sure Makes. I'm going to stand up a little bit so maybe you can see it a little bit better. It was my first time knitting an entire garment flat, I think, because even the sleeves were knit flat, which I will admit I was a little bit like, oh, do I really want to do that at first? But it actually really wasn't anything. I don't know if it's over time that I feel okay with purling, or if I just thought, what's the big deal? Or maybe it's because the cardigan itself, you know, every other row is purled, so then I thought, okay, what's the big deal of doing it in the sleeves? The point is that your gauge ends up being the same versus switching from knitting flat to knitting in the round. I love this cardigan so much. It is so lightweight because I knit it with a strand of Purl Soho linen quill in Peony Pink colorway, and then I held it with a discontinued, actually, base by Knit Picks called Alpaca Bloom, and that colorway is called Coral Shell, and I do have a little bit of the yarn to show you. Let me grab it real quick. This is what I have left of the lace weight. It is 91% superfine alpaca, 9% nylon, 164 yards for 25 grams. I do really like that it comes in 25 grams because then you can purchase closer to the amount that you actually need versus purchasing it in 50 grams. And that's the same for buying other yarns as well. When they can come in smaller increments, then you can buy closer to the yardage that you need versus having to buy like a whole new one for only needing like 10% of it or something. So that's what I have left of this color. It's like a dusty, a very soft dusty pink. And this is the Linen Quill Peony Pink colorway. It's a very light, soft pink. And I can't remember if I had mentioned it in a previous episode. I think I did, that I was playing Yarn Chicken. And part of the Yarn Chicken, it doesn't have to do with the pattern. The pattern estimates were just fine. I was already going to knit the body slightly shorter because that's what I wanted. And then I thought, okay, maybe I can rip out my swatch. But because I'm using two non-superwash yarns and they really clung together, I couldn't really rip apart my swatch. It just wasn't working. And then I had misread part of the pattern and had to rip out one of the button bands and redo that, but that didn't work out very well either because, again, my yarns clung to each other and I ended up having to cut it out, which was fine because I was picking up stitches, so there weren't live stitches at like between the body and the button band, and so I just cut that part out. So of course I lost a couple grams there too, and I think was less than 10 grams short. So I was so close. And then my friend Allie, thank you Allie, came to the rescue and sent me some yarn, and I was able to finish my project, and here it is. It is so nice. It's a DK weight, so I held the fingering and the fuzzy yarn double, but if you wanted to just knit it in DK weight, you totally could do that too. And there were a couple things that are different on mine than in the original pattern. So the ribbing should all be 2 needle sizes smaller than your main body fabric, but at the time when we were testing, I think it was just 1 needle less. So I actually have my ribbing in 2 different sizes. My sleeve and my button band are in 2 needles smaller, but my neckband and my body hem are only the 1 needle smaller. And I also knit it in a slightly different order than the pattern had called for, just based on me playing with my Yarn Chicken and trying to figure out everything. But yeah, it worked out. I think this neckline here, so it sits slightly wider because it isn't on as small of a needle. I think what I'm going to do is just use the rest of the fuzzy yarn and pick up and just do a crochet slip stitch around. And I'm going to use the fuzzy yarn, not the linen quill, because it'll be less noticeable. Not that I mind, but I don't want like a light line across, so I think I'm going to just use the fuzzy yarn and bring it in a little bit. And these buttons, so I couldn't remember where they were from initially when I was looking for buttons, but I've had them for a few years, and I think they actually came with yarn in some, like a goodie bag type of thing. So I still don't actually know where the buttons are from, but I do remember that they were from another like yarn thing. Anyway, they're floral and they're so cute, and actually each button is different. So I'm gonna see if I can hold it closer. But the patterning on there, they're all slightly different. Some have butterflies, some have roses. So yeah, I thought it was the perfect pairing, and it's so comfy. And I actually don't undo the buttons very much. I just kind of pull it off and pull it on like a pullover. But it was, I don't think it's my first time doing buttonholes. But I don't knit a lot of cardigans because, as I mentioned with the purling, at one point I figured I don't want to do half a garment in purling, and I love wearing cardigans and I love the look of them. I love the versatility of them. And now I'm thinking maybe since I'm okay with purling, maybe I will knit more cardigans. I don't know. Do you knit cardigans? I just really like wearing them. I've always liked wearing cardigans. I just find them so easy to throw on. And then if you're just kind of chilly, but not like, but you don't want to be super hot, you can always wear a cardigan, you know, unbuttoned or partially buttoned or whatever the case may be. And I feel like cardigans go really well with pants or dresses or skirts, really anything. Oh, I didn't tell you anything about sizing, did I? The pattern comes in, I believe, 8 sizes, and the recommended ease is, you know, I'm gonna pull it up so I don't tell you the wrong information. Let me see here. Okay, so I was correct. It comes in 8 sizes. The smallest finished size is 39.5 inches, and the largest size is 67.5 inches. And the recommended amount of ease is 4 to 9.5 inches. Now I knit the size 1, which gives me about 7.5 inches of positive ease, and I really like how it fits. And you can always adjust the length and the sleeves. I did not adjust sleeve length. I did adjust body length. I think I made it shorter by like 1.75 inches or so. I just didn't feel like having it that long, and it hits, let's see if I can, let's see, so I'm wearing high-waisted corduroy pants here, so the pants come up to almost my natural waist, and my hip bone is like right here. So let's see, the cardigan hem maybe starts at my hip bone ish, so it goes just past my hip bone a little bit. And I have worn it with a dress and with pants, and I've liked it both ways. So it's super comfortable. I highly recommend the pattern. All right, the second finished project. Are you ready for this? Oh, it is so lovely. This is the Purl Soho Half and Half Triangles wrap. It is a free pattern that I absolutely adore, and I knit mine in Honey Pink, which is kind of a warm beigey, pinky, slightly pinky color, and Turmeric Yellow, which is more of a golden saffron turmeric color. And I use the recommended needle size, which is a US 3, or is that 3.25 millimeter? And the pattern comes in 2 sizes, so you can cast on 190 stitches or 260 stitches, but I decided to cast on 230 stitches because I did some math and I figured out that I wanted to only purchase 2 skeins of each color instead of 3 skeins of each color and not really use much of the 3rd skein, which is what happened with my first one when I cast on 260 stitches, and I think I only went into my 3rd skeins of each color for like 25-ish grams, definitely less than 50 grams. And since I knew I wanted to knit multiple of these, I had to think a little more economically how I was going to make it work. And when I block this, I actually block it to larger than what the pattern states. So it's plenty big and it's all garter, so it stretches around, and I feel like you can easily stretch it multiple more inches or less inches if you kind of squish it in together. I do recommend blocking it though. I wasn't quite sure if it would make much of a difference, but I think it does make a difference. I think it makes it even softer and it evens out the stitches because it is a long-term project. Your gauge may change a little bit from time to time, and that's why I don't actually know my gauge for this project because I'm sure it would be slightly different depending on where I measured it, but I was able to block this out pretty big. And let me see, I wrote down my unblocked measurement. Oh no, I didn't. Oh yeah, okay. My unblocked measurement for my diagonal was 56 inches for this. And post blocking, the diagonal was 65 inches. So that's a pretty big difference. And also I noticed when it was unblocked, it was much more rectangular, but then once I blocked it, I could block it to be more square. So when I finished, one side was, I think, 44 inches, another side was 47 inches, which again, I could have made it more square if I wanted to, but I think the Alphabet foam blocking mats that I was using, aka kid play mats that are repurposed, I didn't have it large enough to really be a full square, so I just worked with what I had, and it's just fine. But yeah, so the point is, it blocks out even bigger, and it is so drapey and so lovely, and oh, I just adore it. What else do I need to tell you about this? I feel like I talk about it every single episode, so there's not a ton more to say. So if there's stuff you want to know, I would recommend going back to other episodes. I also made a video on how I knit mine. So I do a couple of modifications. Instead of wrap and turns, I use German short rows, and then on the edging, I slip one stitch. That is not it, that's the cast on edge. That's the bind off edge. Here we go. So instead of a garter edging to it, there's just one stitch slipped. And that's just personal preference. It doesn't affect the function at all. And I show you how I do that in that video. So I will link to that video in the description box below, and maybe it'll be on one of the corners here on the screen as well. But again, like I said, I love it, and it is so comfortable. And if you do not like knitting garter for miles and miles, I do not recommend it. But if you like something that you can just pick up and put down whenever, and you don't necessarily have to have a deadline, then maybe give it a try. I think I didn't mention yarn, like fiber content, but here's the tag once again. It's the Purl Soho linen quill, 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, 15% linen. And it is 439 yards for 100 grams. And I just feel like it knits up into this beautiful, this fabric is unlike anything that I've used. And it's not like I've used a ton of different fiber materials or anything, but it's different from like a superwash merino, for example. Some people have asked, oh, can I just knit this in a superwash merino? And sure you can. You can knit it in whatever you want. I feel like personally it would feel too heavy, like almost too drapey if it was in a superwash merino. But that being said, I haven't done it. So if you want to give it a try, give it a try. If you want to knit it with fingering weight held double and knit a DK version, go for it. Give it a try. And if you're not sure, maybe knit a small swatch, but that won't give you the feel of how it will be like 100 times bigger, right? So a swatch will give you kind of an idea of the fabric, but it won't necessarily give you an idea of the wearability of it. But yeah, I just really enjoy it. A lot of people have knitted in other non-superwash yarns. If you are on Ravelry, you can click on the project for it and then click on, I think, the yarns tab and see what other people have used. I've only used the linen quill for it, and I really enjoy it. So this is my third one. I have a fourth one coming. I am so excited, and you'll see it probably on the next episode. Okay, we are on to works in progress. I just went through some of my stuff over here, and I think there are 3 works in progress we're going to talk about today. And let's start with this one. Let me put down my tea here. We're going to continue with the enthusiasm for Purl Soho's linen quill. And we're gonna talk about a project that I changed from DK weight to fingering weight. Now, what I recommend if you plan on doing stuff like this is to do several swatches, measure your gauge, do some math, envision what kind of fabric you're looking for, things like that. I thought I had my swatches here, but I don't. I knit maybe 4 or 5 different swatches for this project, and it isn't just for this project. Because I foresee myself using Purl Soho's linen quill for multiple projects, not just the half and half triangles wrap like I have here. Knitting up swatches using different needle sizes, held single, held double, all of that information is valuable to me for future cast-ons. So I knit several different swatches, and I will put like a little, almost like a gift tag. I have this punch out paper thingy, and I just punch out on scrap paper or scrapbook paper, and then I tie it to like one of the ends on the swatch. But on there I will write the needle size, if it's metal or wood needles, the fiber content, the yarn, the colorway, and then my number of stitches by number of rounds or rows for 4 inches. So this pattern is the Sonder Jumper, and it is by Wei Chin of the Petite Knitter. And let me see here. I don't actually have the pattern printed out for this one because for how it was formatted, I was able to just kind of pick out the sections that I needed, and then I just printed out the color work chart page. And the pattern looks like this. I'm going to show it to you from a screen here. So it has a color work yoke. It is knit top down in the round, and it uses 2 colors, but on the different projects that have been done so far, some people have knitted in 3 colors or even more than that. You can really just adapt it to the way you want to. It is written for DK weight. The gauge is 24 stitches by 26 rows for 4 inches. Is that right? Yeah, 24 by 26, I think. And I think that's for the color work portion. And then the stockinette portion is 22 by 30, I believe. But I think she has it written all just for 1 needle size, so you don't switch it up for the ribbing or for the color work. Now that might change for you, but she does write out the different gauges for the color work portion versus the stockinette portion. When I did a DK swatch, I felt like it was too dense for what I wanted, and as we're gearing up into warmer weather, I wanted to knit something that was slightly more airy. So instead of then having to change my needle size, I decided to do it in fingering weight. Now I noticed that some of the projects, other people had also changed their needle size to at least a 5, some people maybe even a 6, and then also knit it in DK weight, but I wanted to change it up. So there are 10 sizes listed. The smallest size has a circumference of 30 inches, and the largest size has a circumference of 65 inches, and I can't remember what the recommended ease is. I think it's just a couple of inches maybe. And there's options for body length, sleeve length, and bust shaping. So I, after doing all my different swatches, decided to stick with a size 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle. I'm just looking at my notes over here. And I decided to change my color work portion to a US 5 needle. And honestly, I feel like over time, my color work gauge has loosened up quite a bit, where I might not need to change to a larger needle. I feel like I almost overcompensate. This happened with a previous color work yoke that I knit before in fingering weight. And I think I notice it more in fingering weight than I do in other like heavier weight yarns, or maybe with sections that have longer floats, because I really don't want it to pucker, I really don't want it to pull, so I think I overcompensate and then knit it a lot looser, which then changes the gauge significantly if I decide to also go up a needle size. So anyway, notes to self. So I decided to knit it in Purl Soho's linen quill in yarns that I actually had planned for my next half and half triangles wrap, and I still am going to be using at least one of the colors, but I'll talk about that another time. So, are you ready to see the start of my Sonder jumper? Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? I don't know if it's getting blown out. The sun kind of disappeared and I had to turn on a light, and it's always questionable how it's going to end up showing. But maybe if I hold it up closer and farther away. So I finished the yolk and I did a quick steam block just to check my tension, and it's great. I will show you the inside as well. But it's very tidy. And I did catch some of the floats. Some of them were a little bit longer, but not super long. So I feel like if you were very careful, you could choose not to catch them. But some of them I did catch. So my main color is Lavender Opal, and it's the Pearl Soho Linen Quill color. That's a very soft light gray with a hint of lavender, hence Lavender Opal. And then my contrast color, I don't have the cake or skein of it with me, but it's this like pastel neon melon color. It's called Peachy Pink, but I feel like it reads much more peach than pink. But it's so beautiful. So I have the sleeves on short cables with stoppers, and I'm currently on the body portion. And it is as light and airy and drapey as I envisioned it would be. You can see maybe here as I fling it around and wiggle it and jiggle it, but it is just so light and airy and slightly gauzy, not completely see-through, but just has that breezy feel that I was going for and the springy colors that I was going for. So I am so pleased with it, and I haven't quite decided body length and all of that and where I'm going with my sleeves. I want to do long sleeves, I think, or maybe bracelet length, maybe 3/4 length. I don't really know. I feel like because it is a lightweight sweater, you know, having elbow length would be very useful too, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't have to decide quite yet, so I'm not going to. So something I forgot to mention is that Amy of Amy Sure Makes is currently hosting a knit along called the Knit Diverse Kal, K-A-L, 2022, and that's the hashtag, so I'll have that up on the screen and in the description box below. And it is a knit along that is highlighting Asian American, Pacific Islander makers and yarn dyers. And it is being hosted out on Instagram, and if you use that hashtag, you'll be entered into weekly drawings. And for more details and guidelines and stuff, I would refer you to go to Amy's grid for that. But I believe the knit along runs through the end of May. And so my Sonder jumper qualifies because Wei Chen is an Asian designer. And then also this next pair of socks I'd like to share with you also qualifies because the yarn I'm using is by Kim of Kim Dyes Yarn, and she's Korean American. The pattern is just one that I'm making up as I go. But this yarn is called Chesapeake Sunset. And it's a beautiful earth-toned, springy mix of colors. It is a variegated yarn, and I've knit it into a fold-over cuff here on top, and I will link to the tutorial here on the screen and in the box below. The pop-up color I'm using is dyed by Kara of the Kinetic Knitter, and I believe that colorway is called Reef. It's a peachy pink, which is different from the peachy pink that I used in my other jumper. That one was called peachy pink, but was much more peachy. And this one I would say is like a dusty pink with a slight, well, maybe it doesn't really have an orange undertone to it. I don't really know. It's kind of an earthy, dusty pink. But I really like it. And I am knitting a 3x1, so knit 3, purl 1 rib. And then for the heel, I did a shadow wrap heel. And the tutorial I follow for that is by my friend Denise of Earth Tones Girl. And I am using Progress Keepers on my project. by Maria of the Woolen Forest, and she is also a Korean American maker. And her progress keepers and stitch markers usually include some sort of gemstone with it, and a lot of them are nature themed. That's what I have marked in my project here. And these I just throw in my tote or purse for whenever we are out somewhere and there's a few minutes here and there, because I don't have to think much. It's just knit 3, purl 1, and if I have them done by, well, I guess by some time, that would be great, but they have no deadline. I am just enjoying the process of knitting those. I don't know if I have additional details for that. Let me see. The yarn is in Kim's sourdough sock base, which is a 400 yards for 100 grams, and I was able to buy it in a half skein, so in a 50-gram ball or skein, which is perfect for me because a lot of my socks I knit anywhere from like 60 or 70 grams, and then since I use that little bit of contrast on top, I will just knit until I run out of yarn. If I have it calculated correctly, I might be able to finish the sock with this one skein and not do a contrast toe, but I'm not for sure. I think my skein actually came a little bigger than 50 grams. It might have been like 55 or 56, which I feel like I should definitely be able to finish the whole sock that way. So I did cast on 56 stitches for this pair of socks. My foot circumference is 8 inches. I am using a US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. They're on 9-inch ChiaoGoo needles, and because it's a 400 yard for 100 gram yarn, I used 56 stitches, and because of ribbing, you have more give, but if I was using a lighter weight yarn, I would probably cast on 60 stitches for my feet. And I think that's it that I have to say about that one. Okay, last work in progress. This is a test knit for Samantha Guerin. It is the Salty Air Tee. If you've been following me for a while, you may know that I am not much of a lace knitter, but I do like the challenge of it every once in a while, and this lace didn't look too complicated, and it is a top-down circular yoke tee, and I like that kind of construction, so I was like, okay, I think I should do this. I should give myself that challenge, that little bit of brain challenge. And I am using yarn dyed by Sam of Lavender Loon Yarn Co. Here's her tag. And the colorway I'm using is Aura, and it is in one of her 150 gram skeins of yarn that is 100% superwash Blueface Leicester. And Blueface Leicester, or otherwise known as BFL, is a really neat fiber in the sense that it has a very long staple, which means that it has less likelihood, it's less likely to pill over time and with friction and wear, so it usually wears really well, and it's a very strong yarn. And this colorway Aura has kind of like a denim-y blue, like a dark wash denim blue base, and then all these different colors, like a very moody rainbow almost. So the yarn in skein form looked variegated in the sense that there were like splashes of color here and there, and not knowing if it was going to pool or not, I just decided to go for it, and I can always pull from the inside and the outside and helical knit for the body if I need to. But for the lace portion, I am not messing with that. I am just pulling from one end, which is the outside in this case. It is kind of bunched up, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to see, I think, but this is where I'm at. Here's my beautiful lace yoke blob. I have the lace repeats sectioned off by markers, which is what Samantha recommends and which is what I always do if I am knitting lace, because it is much easier to find a mistake if I have my sections than if I had to look through like hundreds of stitches. So yeah, it's really difficult to see right now, especially since, you know, lace bunches up on itself unless you block it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this blocks out. But so far, I don't feel like there's a lot of color pooling. I also don't feel like the variegation is so busy that it's going to take away from the lace. I think because it's variegated but not muted, but they kind of blend in together, I feel like it's a really nice wash of color. So I believe this test knit isn't due until June something. So I still have some time to work on it, which is great. And it is a short sleeve tee, so there's not, sleeves, long sleeves to knit, but I'm very excited about it. I can see it with jeans or over like a black dress, or yeah, I don't know. We'll see how I style it, but I am very much looking forward to wearing it. I am knitting the size 2, and that should give me, I think, 3.5 inches of positive ease, which is within her recommended range. And I'm using size 3 and 4 needles, 3 for the ribbing and 4 for the lace and the rest of the fabric. And those are the needles called for in the pattern. I did get gauge when I swatched for it. So more to come on that. On to eats and reads. I've done a lot of cooking. I mean, I always do a lot of cooking, but it's not always the easiest to film or get footage of cooking, but there has been quite a bit of footage, I think, logged in on these last 2 weeks, and I will have the recipes that are available online linked in the description box below. And if they're not, maybe I'll at least write out like the cookbook and authors and stuff. But I tried out a new to me carrot cake recipe, and I have to say it turned out really good. It is from The Walks of Life, and I did include raisins. No, I did not ask my family if they wanted raisins in it or not. I figured if they didn't like them, they could pick them out, but everybody ate every single one. I did not add as many raisins, but yeah, I did add raisins. I left out the nuts, and it wasn't, I feel like some carrot cakes can be almost too moist or dense, and this one wasn't. It was like fluffy, and it was just really good. And so we had that double layered carrot cake with cream cheese frosting and the cutest sprinkles. The sprinkles came from my sister-in-law, she knows the owner of the company of those sprinkles, and they worked together in a lab many years ago, and so she had ordered some of those sprinkles to send us, and they're so fun. And as far as books go, I finished reading City Spies. Thank you, Steph, for the recommendation. It was a good read. I have to say there were some parts in it that I was like, wait, how did that happen? Or what's the follow-up for that? But it is a series, so I have requested the second one from the library, so I need to go pick that up. This book is for like middle school age readers, and I am not really good at giving like book summaries, so I'm not going to give you a book summary, but it has to do with kids being spies, and it's good. It reminded me a little bit of this other book series. Is it called The Benedict Society? I can't remember if that's exactly the name for it. I think The Benedict Society. Anyway, I will flash pictures of the books here on the screen of both of those, but I read The Benedict Society, if that's what it's called, last year maybe, and I really enjoyed that series too. So yes, I need to go pick up the second book of the City Spies series, and I have another book that I haven't opened yet. It is called I wrote it down here, A Long Petal of the Sea, and that's by Isabel Allende. Thank you, Susan, for that recommendation. I haven't started yet because I just needed like some more escapist type, or like a very easy read, which is why I was reading City Spies. City Spies is a very easy read. It's meant for middle school age kids, but I do love works by Isabel Allende, so I will be cracking into that book soon. And I have one more to pick up from the library. It just told me that it was ready, but I can't remember what it is. I'll probably talk about it on the next episode. But are you reading anything fun lately? Do you prefer fiction, nonfiction, a mix-up of both? I read a mix of all of them. And I am that person, I think I've mentioned before, that once I start a book, it's really hard for me to put it down. So I do try to read only in the evenings, otherwise I feel like my day disappears. But the problem with reading in the evening is then sometimes I go way past my bedtime. So sometimes I have to take breaks, otherwise I just end up being exhausted all the time, which, you know, as a parent, oftentimes you're exhausted all the time anyway, but your baseline changes for how tired you are. But yeah, I think that is everything that I wanted to chat with you today. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are staying healthy, and that if you are not, that you get well soon. Oh, sending you positive vibes for taking care of yourself, taking care of your loved ones, taking care of your neighbors, and cheers to being creative. I will talk to you next time. Take care.